I'm asking the question here, if I could only have one camera and one lens, what would it be? Well, I'm going to show you. And actually, after this, I'm going to make a video if I could have one camera with two lenses, what would that be? Which is completely different than this one. But this camera, this video is about if I could only have one camera and one lens. So here it is. You ready for this? Ta-da-ta-da, drum roll. An A7 III by Sony with a Zeiss 55 1.8. This camera and this lens, I always have a ND or a polarizing filter on there. This lens is such a tiny little lens. Look at that. One of the reasons I like it because it's so small. This is such a tiny little lens. It's expensive. I think it's like $1,000 or something like that. But the reason I like it is because it's an all-purpose lens. This 55, anything that's 50 or 55 is an all-purpose lens. For example, here's what I take with me on most of my trips. These are the lenses I take with me the most on almost every trip when I do professional photography. So I've got the 55, then I have a 35, a Zeiss 35 1.4. This is big and heavy for when you're doing landscape shots and things like that. Then we have my Zeiss 85 1.8. A Batis lens, great for portraits, and of course then I have my 105 1.4 by Sigma. Weighs a ton, it's like 1,000 pounds. It's heavy, it's big, it's bulky, it's a hassle to work with, but it takes great pictures. But I find myself when I go on these fancy photo shoots, I hardly ever use the 105, at least recently on this trip. I almost never use the 85. I used to use this all the time. And I use the 35 because of the landscapes and stuff. But most of all, I use the 55. If I just want to grab a lens, it's always the 55 first because it's the medium. If I need to get wider or narrower, of course I can pick these. But 50/55 has always been the go-to lens for doing almost anything. You can do portraits with it. You can do full body shots with it. You can do landscapes with it. You can do almost anything with the 55. It does not distort the face or anything. This is about as wide as you can get before distortion starts coming into the picture. Super fast autofocus, super sharp. Zeiss is super, super sharp. The reason I like the A7 III is because, well, it's one of the smallest full frame cameras you can get. Super reliable, super sharp. It's got more features than you could ever want on a camera. The controls are in the right place. The way you hold it in your hands, it just feels solid, well built. It's professional, and it's actually the A7 III is one of the cheapest of the full frame Sonys. I had an A7R 2 and 3, A7S. Yeah, it's great in low light, but this one, it just takes the best out of all of those and puts it into one camera and makes it more affordable. I think the skin tones are better. It takes great 120p slow motion shots. Of course it does 4K. I never use 4K, but yeah, you can do that. I added an eye cup to it so I can see in bright sunlight. It's small and good for carrying out on location for doing full frame work, but it's also small enough for, you know, just being a tourist or whatever, but it is full frame. So for doing serious stuff, you know, when it comes, if I was to ever, I'm not a professional photographer, but if I was, and I had to do professional stuff, get hired to do things, you know, weddings and stuff like that, this was a great camera to use. I mean, it's like super sharp, super professional. And like I said, if I only had one lens to use, you could do almost anything with the Zeiss 55. This is a good starting point. Again, it focuses super fast, super sharp pictures. Really reliable, really friendly, and it's small. It's the smallest. If I had all the money in the world and could buy anything, size, price, whatever, I would still pick this lens out of all of these, or anything that's out there. I have a 70-200 that I never use. That thing's a monster. I always end up using this, not because of the size, but because it's just a great lens. And it just happens to be small and fast and all that. So anyway, this is my, if I could only have one lens, and one camera, that would be my pair, because it is professional. It's super quality. So that's that. Now, my next video will be if I could have one camera and two lenses. That's going to be a completely different setup for me. It's not going to be this camera. Wouldn't even be full frame. So stay tuned on the next video where I'll show you what my choice would be if I could have one camera and two lenses. So stay tuned. I'll see you in the next Marcus Picks.